You know, I just realized Erica has not been on a single stream with us on the BS playlist. Not one. How lame of her. She needs to join us. Erica, if you're watching, which you probably aren't, but if you do happen to have the misfortune of watching this, come join us, please. All right. All right. Well, hello everyone and welcome back. We were hoping to not get another copyright strike, an unfounded one, which we beat, because the video is up from last week, even though they tried to copyright strike us, which they can't because we're using this fairly. This is fair use. Losers. That was them who copyright struck us. All right. So joining us again, or joining me, I am joined by my host and co-host, Peter, whom we appreciate so much.
Thank you.
Welcome back.
It's good to be here, as always.
Glad to have you. And also one of my editors, Nestlig, whom we are always happy to be joined by.
And hopefully without strange noises.
Hey, strange
like
noises.
I looked up the problem, and I think there are some suggestions that these noises can be due to improper power. And I basically have a laptop, and I plug my microphone via USB connector into the laptop, and perhaps sometimes my laptop doesn't provide enough power to the microphone, and that's why it makes this sound. So now I supply my microphone with a separate power source. So hopefully that should have solved the problem.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
Yes, Smitty, we are calling Gutsit Gibbon out. We're also calling out the Joe Rogan experience, whatever, or whomever copyright struck us last time. You're a bunch of nerds, and we're going to continue streaming and watching this show, so you can't stop us.
Can I call someone out?
Live chat,
can I call someone out?
Have at it, Peter.
Yeah, we're talking about a show with a guy called Meyer. So I once made a very stupid mistake and misspelled someone's last name wrong. Maybe that person can come on, and so we have a Meyer and a Myers, both spelled differently.
Would we torture our favorite Myers with Meyer? Would we do that to him?
So he makes videos about Kent Hovind. This could be...
That's true. He does do that.
This could be some kind of relief, I guess.
Oh, I may have actually a better idea, because I've been thinking about perhaps a new topic for our Philomaniacs series, and perhaps we can discuss the evolution of body plants and gene regulation of body plants.
Yeah.
With P.Z. Myers. Yeah, it would be fun.
That's certainly possible.
Yeah.
Let's see. Who all does we have today? We have Doorknobhead, Icarus, Smitty, Dessel Drace, Bitcores, Vandalia 1998, Zach B. Hancock, and DM verifying the mystery flesh pit wing. I can't ever get through that. And Jake Nelson. Hello. Welcome.
Jake Nelson.
Welcome all. So,
yes.
Yeah, so for anybody who missed out last week, the Joe Rogan experience tried to copyright strike us for watching their video. We won the copyright strike. As you can see, the video is back up. And we're just going to keep going because we can, because this is YouTube. This is the Wild West, baby. We're going to keep going. We're going to keep reflecting on their video and commenting on it and whatnot. And as we saw last time, Stephen Meyer, who has a doctorate in philosophy of science. So he is a philosopher per his doctorate. His sort of intro to theism was like he's afraid of death, if you remember. He basically said, well, it sucks that life is so short and finite. And I want something that is non-finite to exist. And that was his intro to theism. Which, hey, look, that's fine. If you want to believe in that, that's fine. It's your business. But he's out here, talking about how we should all believe him. When that's a very bad reason to believe.
And I still don't get it. So, for me, knowing that I would enter eternal life, that would be torture.
Mm-hmm.
because then there's no way out ever again. I mean, if the reason was I want to see my loved ones who have passed away again, I can get that.
Mm-hmm.
I would do anything to talk with my grandfather again, for instance. I have a dear friend that I've lost. I would love to have a chat with her. Not possible.
Yeah.
But yeah, so kind of would be compelling, I guess. But eternal life?
Yeah.
No.
Well, I guess we'll. So Icarus says, I watched part 1 afterwards. I disagree with everything you guys said about digital and code. I can see disagreements with our usage of digital. John Perry also left a message about that. And I suppose in a sense you can say DNA is digital, but I would very much not say it is code. It's a molecule. It's not a code. And I think
it also depends what you're referring to. Are you referring to the sequence of nucleotides, or are you referring to the correspondence between the triplets and the amino acids? Yeah.
Right. Yeah, because they're right. The genetic code, as it is usually defined, at least in like biology classes in college, the genetic code is the codon assignment, which triplets of nucleotides correspond with a particular amino acid. That's usually what in like college classes they refer to as genetic code. The genome itself, I would say, is not a code, but the genetic I mean that's what we're saying. That is what we said. DNA is a molecule, but genetic code is a code. Yeah, that's what we said last time. I don't disagree with that. That's what we said.
Also, it's if you look up the terminology of coding, like it's the so-called genetic code with the amino acids and the triplets. It's more analogous to a cipher rather than a code.
Okay.
Like a cipher is just a specific rule where you replace one symbol with another, but the code is you replace a word for a sentence or a sentence. Yeah, it's a different different type of rules basically. So it's more analogous to a cipher than a code, but still.
Yeah.
Analogies.
I try to avoid analogies, in general. Yeah, what'd you say, Peter?
Yeah, I think the biggest problem that I have with calling DNA a code is that so there are multiple definitions for a code. The one that they are implying is information passed on from one intelligence to another with a specific goal. And that's the part.
That's true.
That's the part that I object to. So
right, because DNA is not, it's just a molecule, and all of the molecules it interacts with are not thinking.
The thing is, if it was a code, right, then it would be written by an intelligent designer, and while it is written on the paper, it would develop its own mistakes, which wouldn't be a great code. I mean, if you did the same thing with, let's say, computer software, which they like to compare it to, that means that every single time you use a piece of software on your computer, lines of code are written. If those lines of code are not the same every single time for every single function, your computer wouldn't work anymore. But this is what DNA does. You have mutations every single time, and different mutations for every single time. So it's not analogous with a computer code.
I have to correct myself. Like the difference between a cipher and a code is that the code uses arbitrary symbols to conceal a message, but a cipher is you use a specific type of rules to decipher a message. For example, if you use a rule where you replace the the 26 letters of the alphabet with the 26 numbers, that's a cipher. Like you use specific rules, like you replace A with 1, B with 2. That's a cipher, basically. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's more analogous. I think it's more now the genetic code with the triplets and the amino acids. It's more analogous to cipher. Yeah.
Okay.
And Icarus says there are self-modifying programs. Yeah, that's correct. But there are also software also needs specific pieces of code in order to run. Another problem would be that if you make a copy for yourself, just for safety measures, in case your computer crashes and you need to reinstall it, you can make your own copy. Yeah, that wouldn't work because that would be full of new mistakes. So it's not analogous to a computer code, no matter how you look at it.
So Zach B. Hancock says the translational mutation rate is exceptionally high, around 10 to the -3. Wow. Alrighty. I did not know that. So that's kind of cool.
Is it me or is Jackson's mic a bit lower quality?
Is something wrong with mine? Can you not hear me?
It's just lower quality for me. Maybe it's me.
Peter, how do I sound? Do I sound okay?
Your sound is okay for me. I mean,
it also sounds normal.
Maybe different than normal.
People in the chat, do I sound bad? Do I sound okay? Do I sound bad?
Maybe I'm mistaken, but to me it sounds lower quality than usual, but not too bad. Not too bad, just yeah.
Okay, I don't know. No, you sound fine. Okay, well, if I sound worse, if anybody hears me and I sound worse, and just tell me, and I'll try to.
We can
stand a volume.
And we shall.
Says I could stand a volume increase.
We should. Okay. Well, if you sound worse, then we shall blame it on the content that we're covering, and then that should be it. Oh wait, I can't get to Jackson's sound settings. Oh wait, maybe I can.
Hold on.
Maybe I can.
How about now? Does that sound a bit louder? Is that a bit louder for you guys? Does that sound any better?
Yeah, a bit for me. Yeah.
Okay. Can you say something, Jackson?
She sells seashells down by the seashore.
That is weird. I'm trying to up your volume, but it's weird enough that's not working on my end. While I can do that with Nestle.
They say it sounds fine on the thing. Oh well,
yeah.
That's okay. Alrighty.
It's 5x5, so
yeah,
can't get any better.
As long as it's not 2x4, I guess. You
know. We will save that. We'll save that from when we cover Kent Hovind videos. We'll have a 2x4.
All right. Well, let's get back to it. I guess we're gonna keep on going, and so this time when we're gonna bounce back to this screen when we stop. That way we can try to avoid copyright strikes as much as possible.
Okay. Well,
alrighty.
It's going to unveil something. Unveil something.
What?
Because I'm not always at the screen when we do this show. I have.
Oh, really?
I have my little toy, and I take that with me, and I wander through the room, and I can just do the entire show. So, if I'm not here when we come back to the screen, I'm actually here, but not in front of the camera.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, I didn't know that. Fun facts that we're all learning together.
Hence are the secrets of the producer. He can do whatever he wants and no one sees it.
That's very true.
Unless you watch On Ra and you surprisingly see an entirely naked Peter pop up in the middle of a stream because his dog touches his fancy keyboard and puts him on full camera. I wasn't naked, by the way, but I was not wearing a shirt.
You were shirtless.
Yes, because it was hot. Which can't happen now because the weather is horrible. So
Yeah. All right.
okay.
Well, let's get to it then.
Shall we start?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay.
There's a lot to talk about here.
Sorry, that was a long answer.
It was very long, and it's very hard to keep up with you. But when you're talking about,
I don't remember what he was talking about.
This process, and this first of all, I want to go back one step further. You were saying something about, and I'm paraphrasing, but whatever this intelligent thing is, creating us somehow or another in its image, or somehow or another thinking the way it thinks.
That sounds like Christianity.
How did you say that again?
Yeah, this was the idea of the early scientists who got science going. It was the way they've talked about it was the intelligibility.
He's literally
of the
just saying this is
universe.
Christianity.
It was intelligible. It could be understood by us.
He's literally just saying it's Christianity. That's all he's saying.
Sorry, I was muted. I was so mad I didn't unmute. So this wasn't what early science said. This was what the Bible said, that we were created in someone's image. There's no scientist on the planet who said that we were created in someone's image. At least not as far as I know.
Right, there's no science that says that. Yeah.
No.
There are people who say that, but there is no science that says that. Yeah.
Okay, sorry. I need to unmute when I get mad.
Because our minds had been made in the image or likeness of the creator of the universe itself.
Isn't it just possible that our minds are complex and curious? And so we're trying to figure out what all these things are and what DNA is and what molecules. And we're trying to figure out the very fiber of existence itself. What is it made out of? Wouldn't any curious, self-aware creature start to contemplate these things? And if it really is an intelligent force that made us to think,
it's actually a fair response.
Is it just me, or is he just slightly behind what we know already? Because he's talking about that we're just about to discover what DNA is, what it's made out. It's chemicals.
Well, I mean, no. What he's saying is, isn't it possible that instead of it being and can we switch back? What he's saying, I think, is instead of like, is it an intelligent designer who has imbued us with these qualities? Isn't it more probable that we're just curious and we're learning about the universe? And that's fine. Yeah, that's true. We are just learning about the universe. It do be like that. Is Joe theist or atheist? That's a good question, Icarus. Because he kind of sounded like he was agnostic when he did his talk with Richard Dawkins. He was like, I like the arguments you're making, but I'm not totally convinced that there is no God. So he kind of sounded like he was agnostic on it. And also, remember from the last time, he basically called out Steve when he said us like, oh, so you just believe this. You know, he wasn't saying like, oh, I agree with you. He's saying like, oh, so this was just comfort for you.
And keep in mind, most of his fan base probably is Christian. So it wouldn't be a smart move to say, hey, I'm an atheist. It would be better to say I'm an agnostic. Because then people could say, okay, yeah, I get that. You don't know that God exists. But there's still the possibility that you believe that he does. It's kind
Brian
of a
Stevens is in here. Yeah. Rogan is paraphrasing Douglas Adams' puddle analogy, as Jake Nelson says. Yeah, you're right. That's basically what he's doing. He's just like, yeah, it kind of seems like we're just observing the universe, and maybe we're just saying, well, it seems like it was made for us because we're here in it. Which Meyer, I'm sure, is going to push back and go, no, it was made for us. Rah. Yeah. I mean, because he literally just wrote a book titled "The Return of the God Hypothesis."
That's why we can go everywhere without getting killed.
Exactly.
Instantly.
Right. Yeah.
I mean,
which, by the way, for anyone who's wondering, no, the God hypothesis has not returned in any scientific fields. Technically, it was never in any scientific fields in the first place. No one ever tested God. It was a presumption, a hypothesis that was never tested, belief. But science is a works with philosophical naturalism. That does not mean God does not exist by any means, by any stretch of the imagination. It just means
Jackson, you have
science
that wrong.
does not have the tools to investigate God.
No, you have that wrong. Science doesn't investigate God because it says in the Bible that thou shalt not test God. So it's a big no. So we can't. Scientists can't do that. God said no.
Doorknob Head says the rerun of the God hypothesis. That's very true. Yeah, that's very true. The best thumbnail. I couldn't figure out what a modern rabbit was doing with Cambrian echinoderms. Well, I'm glad you like it. Lorraine Drosophila. I like that name. Because JBS Haldane, for anyone who I'm sure everyone's familiar. Sorry, methodological naturalism. Smitty, you are correct. My bad. My mistake. I misspoke. Yes, the JBS Haldane famously or infamously, I guess, depending on your persuasion, said, we don't find any bunnies in the Cambrian regarding, like, the transitional fossils.
Yeah.
So, sorry, I said I said philosophical naturalism. I meant methodological naturalism. Science is methodologically naturalistic. That means you are just using the tools of naturalism to investigate reality, because we can't, using science, investigate supernatural things. Now, in philosophy, you can try to like reason to the existence of God using different like logical and axiomatic arguments and things like that, but that's a separate field that uses separate modes of knowing about the world. So.
Yeah, they ask different questions and the answers are pursued in a different way. So yeah,
right.
That's pretty much it. That's pretty much it.
Yep. Okay. Yep. We can go back if you guys are ready.
Okay.
The way it thinks. Why would it have war? Why would it have murder? Why would it have all the horrific crimes that we see?
Hey,
drug
Peter, that's what
addictions?
you
Why
asked.
would it create us in a form like that?
Yeah, I mean,
that's true.
There was the background of this. Let's start with the first question. I'll get to the second question.
Okay.
Well, it's an easy answer.
It's all a test.
It's an easy answer because God likes war. He likes to have people killed, kill people, drown people.
That's true.
I recently found a nice meme that said, sometimes I think, what would Jesus do? And then I drown my opponent. I like that one. I mean,
oh no, that's terrible.
I try to drown I drown him. I try to drown him. I mean,
you drown them in knowledge, Peter. You just absolutely flood them with information.
The entire Bible is about killing and maiming and ripping babies out of wombs, and that's the stuff God likes.
True.
It starts.
It starts chasing rich people with a whip. Actually, that's kind of based. Chasing rich people.
That is kind of based. True. Well, that's like that makes me think of when we did the Jonathan Wells video, and he was like, "I was opposed to Vietnam," and we all went based.
But in the early Testament, Old Testament, you still had to offer babies to God. He liked human sacrifices. He got a little bit more civilized after that, and then, when Jesus came, it all got turned around. Now we were supposed to eat Jesus. Not sure how that works, but there are churches.
He was just blowing off some steam, Peter.
Yeah,
it's fine.
I mean, he was new at the whole being a god thing and having subjects on a planet that pretty much during the entire Old Testament didn't want to do what he wanted them to do, because he created them so good, as it said. He saw that it was good. Maybe he should have gone for better than that. I mean, what would a perfect being do with something that's just good? would make him imperfect. Okay, and it's my ramble. Let's continue, because if I
All right, let's
go on a
continue.
ramble like this, I can talk for hours.
I'm wondering, does he actually mention anything about like biology, or does he keep talking about the theology stuff?
I hope he gets to biology. Well, he did talk about, like, he lied about Tawfik's research last time, but we'll see. Yeah, let's keep going.
Mm-hmm. All right, we'll see.
It's
equally
profound and good question. The historians of science have asked a question. It's the why then, why there question. We've had all these great civilizations.
Which is what?
Egyptians made the pyramids, as you and I were talking about. We had the
did they though?
The
Was
Chinese
it
had gunpowder. The Romans built aqueducts.
Mm-hmm.
But for some reason, in Western Europe, in the 16th and 17th centuries, and I think the antecedents for that go back a little further. You get these very systematic methods for studying nature arising. And you get this concern to use mathematics to describe the order in nature. And you get this incredibly productive, historians of science call it the scientific revolution. Something really dramatic changed. And it's different than other civilizations. And as they've examined what happened, they said, well, the material, the material substrate, or the things you would need to do science, were in all the other cultures, and there were many great cultures. But this systematic method of studying nature uniquely arose in Western Europe in a particular time, in a particular context. And many historians of science have come to the conclusion that the thing that was the difference that made the difference was the worldview, was the philosophical assumptions of those Western European scientists who were almost entirely coming out of a Judeo-Christian worldview. And one of the key assumptions that they had was that systematic study of nature was actually possible. It's actually very hard to do science. It's very hard to see a pattern in what can initially seem to be a chaotic jumble of sense data. And these thinkers had the conviction that there were such patterns, there was rationality, there was order behind things, because there was a God who had made the universe to be orderly and to be understood. So that was just one of those thought differences, or differences in thinking, that historians have identified as a key feature that explains why the scientific revolution happened where it did. And that's not to say that the only people that can do science once it gets going are people of religious faith, but it is to say that the people with a particular religious faith had a reason to pursue science that apparently other cultures did not have to the same degree.
Do we know that for a fact, though? Because there's a lot of evidence that we've lost
let's pause for a moment.
Civilization.
Let's pause for a moment. Okay, so, like, I've heard this one before, right? I know we've all heard this one before. This is the, like, only Christians have a foundation for doing science, which is obviously nonsense, because Christians are not the only theists in the world, nor are they even the only monotheists in the world, right? Obviously, other civilizations have theism, and even some have monotheism. Now, maybe they were in such a case because...
Speaking about science, Jackson, remind me, why do a lot of stars have Islamic names? Wait, wasn't there another religion doing science before?
Right, exactly.
They became overly religious and stopped doing science?
Well, I mean, algebra is an Arabic word, algebra, right? A lot of math came from, like, the Islamic scientific revolution, or the golden age of Islam, or whatever you call it.
When you do your math, you use Arabic numerals instead of the Roman ones that, funny enough, were used in dating movies, because no one could read the Roman numerals, and then they wouldn't see that the movie was out of date. Fun fact, but it's true.
Yeah. It just said Jews and Islamists are just Christians who are wrong.
Yeah,
that's what the Christians think.
I also find it funny. I find it funny that he that he claims that I saw
Netflix is dying.
Yeah, I'm dying. So something got stuck in my throat for a minute. I found it funny that they claim that science developed in a particular context, a particular time, and then he uses the word Judeo-Christianity.
Right. No, and Zach Hancock makes a good point. Such a goofy argument. For some reason, apparently it took Christians 1,400 years to start doing science. Yeah, exactly. Christianity had been around for a long time. By the time, Francis Bacon and freaking Galileo and all these guys started coming along, Christianity had been around for a long time. This is like the argument they make with slavery, right? Where they go, "Oh, Christianity removed the need for slavery in the West." What are you talking about? What are you talking about? Like, Christianity was around way before there was any sort of mass abolishment of slavery in the world, right? Like, that's just insane. There's no way. And they try to make this retrospective argument like, well, it provided the necessary philosophical foundation for removing slavery. Then why did it take 1,800 years? What does that even mean?
Why is the Bible pro-slavery then?
Why is the Bible pro-slavery?
Nowhere in the Bible where it says that you can't own people as property, whereas there are several verses that say that you can.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Now what probably happened was for the... Oh, I'm sorry, Nestle, go ahead.
Oh, no, you finish. Sorry,
I was just going to say, for the development of science in the Enlightenment period, what you probably had was a combination of factors, right? Like, you had a bunch of rich families who were not constantly at war with each other all the time, so that that's what constantly means. So that they could spend their money in other philanthropic ways, and as a result, they could fund naturalists to go to other countries as these kingdoms like Spain and Italy and England and France were expanding around the world. They could go to other countries and collect specimens, as we all know Darwin did, and then bring them back and do research on them. And that's how many of the early scientific fields got started, was countries sending naturalists on ships, to do surveying expeditions and bringing them back.
Yeah.
And financing the colleges and stuff. Go ahead.
And that's also what happened in the during the in the Islamic world, that they sent how do you pronounce it again? Caliphs for expeditions, and they brought back numerous books, and also it's also one important point in history for the development of science as well. That thing. So it's more like science tends to develop when cultures tend to interact with each other, either positively or negatively. Like, I think also colonialism also has
absolutely
something to do with making discoveries. Yeah, it's really science is not always good, and not always, but it's neither good nor bad. There's no morality in science, of course. So yeah,
right. Yeah, it's amoral.
Always keep it in mind. Yeah, it's amoral.
Yeah. And the same is true. We still do get a very high return on investment from even military science, and not just in terms of shooting brown people across the world, but also the internet, microwaves, sonar, radar. All these things were all military inventions first, which then got came into the public sphere. So yeah.
One thing didn't quite make it. That was a giant turtle.
What?
That tasted so good that it never made it to the UK. Fun fact. But they tried, and then one of the voyages, they could see the harbor and still decided to eat the last surviving turtle that they had brought back from the Galapagos Islands because it tasted so good.
Well, I believe one was brought to Darwin because they brought one, and that tortoise eventually ended up in Stephen's zoo.
Yeah, eventually they brought one on earlier expeditions. Yes. They ate all the turtles that they brought back. So
yeah, because the tortoise that Darwin had eventually ended up in the zoo, in the Australian zoo that Steve Irwin ran, which is kind of cool,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's still alive, but anyway, because
No,
I think it died.
It passed away
okay.
couple of years ago, I think. Okay, so
Oh,
you chose that we be on camera, and my dog chose to make it the worst experience of my life.
All right, we can go back, Peter.
I'm doing nothing.
Go back.
I'm doing absolutely nothing. My dog's just.
He saw the red Kermit, and he thinks that Kermit is about to appear from the.
He's watching Arn Ross dogs, and he thinks that he can outdo them. I told Arn about this. We need to get our dogs under control. Okay, continue.
Very true. Yeah.
Because he's not giving in. Okay.
We've lost a lot of their knowledge. The burning of the Library of Alexandria. We don't really know that much about what they knew. Obviously, they had some incredibly complex
it was
mathematics
mostly
that developed the
poetry.
pyramids. We know that. We know there had to be measurement. We know there had to be like some very complex geometry for them to figure out.
The Arabic world
not that hard.
Well, certainly there may have been other things that have gone on that we didn't know about.
Also, the Arabic world preserved a lot of Greek text. Yeah.
Well, absolutely, and
and
the same is true of like ancient Greece, because when the Arabs met with the Europeans again in like Spain, when they conquered like North Africa and made back into Spain, they had texts from like Plato that had been lost for centuries, you know. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah, no, this silliness.
It's just like Stephen Meyer is just trying to uphold Western exceptionalism. That's just it. Yeah.
Yeah. No, 100%. Yeah. But the whole Library of Alexandria thing had like electricity and airplane. No, it didn't. It had poetry. We know this. We know it did not have like super advanced tech and stuff. This is known. This is just conspiracy theory stuff. There are no documents from like way back then that indicate anything like like airplanes or cars or whatever. There's like a handful of documents that people like the Ancient Alien dude have tried to sort of retroactively like reinterpret as like, oh, maybe this was a light bulb or something. Like, no, it wasn't. It was not. Why didn't the Byzantines have which texts? Which ones? I don't know what you mean. But it is kind of cool that the Arabs had texts from Plato that nobody else had. They got to reintroduce those to the Western world. I think that's pretty cool. So anyway, all right, we can keep going.
Dornov had mentioned my dog looks like a puppet that came to life. He's like this guy. I don't know if you've ever seen him, Rod, and I don't know his last name anymore. He had an emu. Terrifying if you had him on the show because he would attack all the guests. My dog's like that. Okay.
The only point I was making was that the people who got science going in the 16th and 17th century did so for a discernible religious reason, if you will, and that is just a fact of history.
But that doesn't necessarily mean they were correct.
Well, it does mean that they generated a very fruitful way of investigating nature.
It certainly aided them, and it probably motivated them in a lot of ways and guided them in a lot of ways. But it doesn't necessarily mean that they're correct in that assumption.
No, and I wouldn't argue for the correctness
I'm not really
of the
following the argument.
Yes, you would.
On the basis of the fruitfulness of science, but it is a fact of history. I think that a theistic worldview was a very important motivator for those early scientists who did get science going, and that science did turn out to be very fruitful. So,
which is probably a very good point.
I have other arguments for theism.
Okay, so no, the theism is not in and of itself a fruitful endeavor, right? This may have helped, push them along to develop science. It is science that is the fruitful endeavor, not the theism. The theism may have served, certainly, as an undergird to push them in that direction to develop science. But it is the science that found stuff. Sorry, go ahead.
it's also not just like what, like he wants to focus on one motive, which is theism, apparently.
Right.
But there are many there are also, of course, many motives. Like the early chemists or alchemists, practically, that they were motivated to turn lead into gold, and that's how they discovered modern chemistry. Like we can go down that road as well. Like, oh, now alchemy is the basis of science. Like it's
Right.
really silly. Yeah.
Right. He's focusing so hard on the theology and not, as Rogan pointed out, like maybe people are just curious. Which, like, yeah, people are curious. People want to know how stuff works.
And also keep in mind, the churches were where the money was, because people were tithing. And so the churches could afford to start schools and to start doing research. And so, yeah, it's not surprising that that's where education and science started, because that's where the money was. Everyone was tithing because everyone was religious and everyone went to church. And if you didn't put in your cents at the end of the sermon, then you were ousted, because that was not a good thing. And we can see today how much money the Catholic Church still has.
That's true.
Abhorrent how much money they have. But okay.
Yeah.
Continue?
Yes.
Okay.
No, that's okay.
Yeah.
But for people that are atheists,
Yeah.
you know, that widely dismiss religion as being silly, like
or anti-science,
right? Anti-science, but it's literally probably the birth of science, as far as we know in the Western world.
Yeah, I know you've had Neil Tyson on your show, and he makes this claim that Newton's science was a dead end, or Newton's religious beliefs didn't lead to any good questions. They were a dead end. He had great scientific insights, but his religion was bad news for science. But it turns out Newton didn't make the God of the gaps argument that Tyson accused him of making, and many other people have accused. And it was his greatest work,
guys,
the Principia,
wrong.
his work on gravitation, was meant to display. It was partly a religious project. He was trying to demonstrate the principles, the mathematical harmony that had been built into creation by the Creator. And he later writes a theological epilogue to the book called The General Scholium, where he makes the religious motivation for his scientific work completely explicit and ends up making design arguments right in the context of that work. So this is, I just think
good for him.
It's something that persuaded me that.
I just want to point out, he didn't say
theism initially before I encountered any scientific arguments for.
So he said Neil Tyson was wrong, and maybe he was. I have no idea, but he said, "Oh, he's wrong."
I remember that. Yeah, I remember that Neil deGrasse Tyson says that, like, when Newton stumbled upon the problem, I think the problem was like the problem of multiple bodies. Like, basically, if you use his math to calculate the movement of just the moon and the Earth, then it's pretty simple. But when you have the moon, sun, and Earth system, that's a three-body system, then it becomes way too complicated. And I think Neil deGrasse Tyson says that Newton basically threw his hands up and says, "Oh well, God must uphold the solar system from devolving into chaos." But I don't know if that's correct either.
I also don't know. And he didn't say what the correct interpretation of events is either. He just said he's wrong. Like, okay, can you tell us what the correct thing is so we can be correct? I don't know.
And I'm also not very interested. I'm also not very interested in like dunking on Newton the way.
That's true. A guy in the 1700s. Right.
Yeah. He was also an alchemist too, Isaac Newton. So
yes,
we can go into many different we can piece apart many different motivations of like science didn't develop at one particular moment in time. Of course, Stephen Meyer wants to focus on the 1700s. because for reasons, and he wants to ignore any development before or after, and he wants to ignore any other motivations these people might have had, even at this particular time. He wants to, like, it's completely motivated reasoning, and that's nothing more. He wants to uphold his belief that theism, particularly Christianity, is like the like on the special place in what makes people ask interesting questions. Like that's what he wants to believe.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, absolutely.
And keep in mind that they also want to have the big names in science firmly in the believers part, because that's what they love to use, especially when you go to the likes of Ken Ham. We developed science. Do atheists take that? And if you admire people like Newton for the work that he did do and coming up with the math that he came up with, you're immediately reminded, but he was a Christian. Aha, as if that has anything to do with it. I mean, pretty much everyone in those days was a Christian. There were countries where you were killed if you weren't, surprisingly enough.
Yeah.
So, okay, continue.
And it's also noteworthy to say that, or to point out that modern scientists and also modern philosophers are predominantly non-believers. Like especially compared to the general public as well. Of course.
Well, Nestle.
Stephen Meyer doesn't want to. Yeah.
Well, he would say to that, that's science has gone astray nowadays. It's the evil materialists who've taken over.
Mm-hmm. They want to be God, Jackson.
Like even
that's it. They want to be
God. Like the 16 and 1700s were the golden age of science. Like anything before, just trivial Aristotle, nothing important, and anything after, the evil atheists have taken over science.
Mm-hmm.
That's that's pretty much it.
Making computers and things and cars and things no one needs.
He wants.
Right? I would just say though the whole history matters, and there's no we often use the term revolution at some point, but I think there is no special point where you can say, aha, here's something special. Like every step is important in some ways. Yeah.
Well, Nestle, I think that's in some ways emblematic of Meyer's position on everything.
Mm-hmm.
Because think about. I'm going to do some armchair philosophizing here. Here we go, guys. Think about Darwin's doubt. Darwin's doubt is the argument that the Cambrian is the revolution of organisms. They just appeared out of nowhere. Suddenly, there they were, right? It's this revolution, of animals. And then he talks about, well, there was a revolution of dinosaurs and a revolution of flowering plants and a revolution of mammals in the Eocene, and all these other things. It's always revolutions with him. It's never there were gradual steps leading up to this thing. And I think in some ways that's because he's a creationist, right? Like if he thought, now he says he's old Earth, but if he thought in terms of and maybe he is, I'm not, if he says he's old Earth, then fine, whatever. But if everything to him is not about like a gradual unfurling, but just, and so it was, and so it was, and so it was, then he's not going to think in terms of that, right? He's just going to think of everything being instantaneous. And that's what he's doing here. He's like, the scientific revolution was just this big instant thing thanks to Christianity. It's like, well, hold on. What about all these other things that you're leaving out? What about all these other historical aspects of like the Enlightenment that you're leaving out? You're just neglecting to mention them. Same is true, of course, of his arguments to the Cambrian and everything else.
What about some of the civilizations that predated Christianity, like the Egyptians?
No, not real. Fake.
Fake
news.
I'm still.
What were they doing? Just making mummies all day.
Yeah. I'm still impressed with what they could do. We now know how they did a lot of the stuff, but with simple, crude tools, make art that is magnificent, make buildings that are awesome and still inspiring today. Yeah, it's not as if it all started with the Christians. I mean,
yeah.
Well,
that's something that Tim O'Neill often points out on Twitter. We tend to think a lot in modern day of people in the past being dumber than us, because here we are with our computers and our TV and our technology and everything. They weren't dumber than us. They didn't have access to the technology that we have. They were equally as bright as we are. They just didn't have, the century extra of technological advancements.
And they also didn't have the shoulders of giants to stand on like we do, because we have massive libraries with every single discovery made all over the world. So we don't have to invent the wheel over and over again. We have a repository of what has done before. And keep in mind that those things that were invented in those early days were as important as your computer and your electric cars because of global warming.
Absolutely.
They weren't stupid, not at all.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you might wonder what people like that could do in an age like this if they had lived. I'm at times I would wonder what Newton could have done, what Einstein could have done had he had access to computers and instant information and calculations made easier. I mean, what could those people have achieved with even the technology that we gained in mere decades?
Yeah. I was what was that? I don't remember what I was watching. I think it was one of Dapper's videos, where he pointed out, Darwin came up with the theory of evolution in a time when we knew very little about the natural world. But what that tells you is evolution is that obvious, right? It's that apparent that even with such a limited scope of the natural world, of the organisms that live on it, evolution is just that obvious, and I think that's kind of funny.
It's also like especially when you travel around the world, just like Alfred Russel Wallace did too. Yeah, you just notice like, hey, why what's this weird line here in the Indonesia where, like, if you go south, there's one specific type of fauna, and if you go north, there's another specific type of fauna.
Right.
Biogeography. Why is that? Yeah.
Zach, you thought up the exact quote I was thinking of. I prefer Gould's notion in that I wonder about all the people that died in cotton fields and mills that never got the chance to show their genius. Yes, I was thinking that exact same quote. Yeah,
which
is
brilliant quote. Yeah.
And I've used something similar, which is why I'm on social media and trying to be an activist. Because what if somewhere in a young Earth creationist family, a child is born that has the capability to cure cancer, but never will because of the education that it gets in a young Earth creationist family, and is pretty much told, okay, learn a trade and then go to work. Those are the risks. Ooh. My StreamYard had a glitch, but we're still on air.
Yeah, I saw that it slowed down for a sec, but yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
For me, slowed down too. Yeah, but now it's fine. But also, like, about the Gould's quote, I think you could also, like, imagine, like, what if the Greek society didn't collapse, and perhaps the Greeks were the center of scientific revolution in recent time. Like you can spin these like what if scenarios. Maybe the Western world got lucky, or again, perhaps they were like dominating the global order, basically, also at this particular time, like just establishing colonies around the world and becoming more powerful because of that too.
Having more money and having the ability to start schools and educating people and doing science. It's all. If you trace the money, you will trace where the science is done. That's it.
I think if you have just having the time, the resources, and the power, then that's when science can get established. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. Well, we can keep going.
It's difficult. Anyways, we can keep going. Yeah. Sorry.
Oh no, you're fine.
Yeah.
For it was this whole question of the reliability of the mind. On what basis can we trust in the reliability of the mind? One very good answer
is he really doing Descartes
was created by the same God who created the world, and that God created structures of the mind that allow us to know.
Wait, I thought it was the intelligent designer.
So it's God. Again, back to the other question.
Yeah.
Why did God create war? Why does God create murder? Why does God create all the horrific things we see in the news, school shootings? Why would God create a mind that's
not God, that's the devil?
Well, I think the traditional theism.
I know the answer to that because it's in the Bible.
Oh no, Peter, let him answer. I want to hear his answer.
He likes the smell of burned flesh. That's it.
Maybe.
Sorry.
I can believe that. I want to hear what he says.
That is the free will defense. It's not that God created us, he created free agents, knowing that it was better to create free agents who had the ability to choose, and therefore to choose to love him or not, or love each other or not, than it was to create puppets.
That is such a boring and tired
but with
argument.
That decision to create,
and it's also easily disproven as well.
It's an argument he has.
Even according.
It's an argument they have to make because the other option is to blame God, and you can't blame God, can you? I mean, there has to be a cop-out.
What were we saying, Nestle?
But you can also point out that it's not mutually exclusive. Like, for example, like even according to them, God has both free will and he is perfect. Like, he has no flaws. So those two things are not mutually exclusive. So the explanation, like, oh, humans are imperfect because they need free will, but that doesn't explain anything, because God can have both these qualities at the same time as well. So
can we freely choose to not do evil?
Yeah.
And if we are to go by his worldview, he likes to use that word. I hate it. But are we imperfect because of who designed us again? I mean,
no, it's not his fault. It's our fault. Because the devil, Satan, he did that. It's his fault. It's not God. You can't blame God for this.
No.
Or
you can't
blame
him for anything, actually.
That's true. When we talked to Jeffrey J. Lauder about the Turk debate, Lauder actually mentioned this argument. There's a difference between like moral patients and moral agents, right? Moral agents are individuals who can make moral decisions, but moral patients are individuals who cannot make moral decisions, but are themselves the subject or are subject to others, the decisions of moral agents, right? So like babies are moral patients, but not moral agents. They are subject to decisions from moral agents, but they themselves cannot make moral decisions. So with that being the case, and this brings up like, the problem of gratuitous evil, right? So gratuitous evil, a lot of Christians argue that like evil serves a purpose. It serves the purpose of teaching us something about the world so that we become better, which I think is absolute nonsense, but whatever. Let's just take it at face value. So if, for instance, you're I don't know, you like cross the street or something and you nearly get hit by a car. So now, in the future, okay, I better look both ways before crossing the road. Well, most situations aren't like that. In a lot of cases, it's like if a baby gets cancer or something like that. Well, the baby can't learn from that. There's nothing the baby could do otherwise. It's a baby, for goodness sakes. What was the good in that? Where was the lesson that you can come away with after that? Don't have babies? I don't know. You know. And so that's the gratuitous evil argument. Like the free will stuff doesn't make any sense. Free will literally only covers what humans intentionally do to each other. It doesn't cover like a volcano wiping out a village full of people. Doesn't cover like, you know, a fire sweeping through and destroying a town. Doesn't cover babies getting cancer. Free will covers none of that. It does not make sense of any of that data.
And you can also point out that like according to them, again, God has both free will. According to them, both free will, and he is perfect. He cannot do evil. So by that logic, we can just say like, oh, God could have created human beings as perfectly moral and having free will at the same time. So it explains nothing according to them. Even according to them, it explains nothing. Also, like, does free will exist in heaven and does evil exist in heaven? They will say like, oh yeah, we have free will in heaven and everybody is good in heaven. So
it depends on who you ask.
Again, you can have.
It depends on who you ask, because I've met Christians who said there is no free will in heaven, because once you're in heaven, you no longer have the will to do wrong. So,
okay.
I mean, I don't have that will here.
Isn't it like if free will is important? Doesn't that make heaven like a like you become lobotomized almost?
Yeah, you become an automaton.
If you go into heaven,
you become an automaton.
You become an automaton, basically. Yeah.
And
like now you are Pinocchio with strings on you.
Leslie, but you have to, because let's say that you make it in heaven, and let's say you have a kid who got in touch with the wrong friends and does everything that is forbidden, is in jail all the time. This kid is going to hell. So what are you going to do? Sit in heaven and be happy while knowing that your kid is in hell? How can you be happy? That's one of the questions that I ask people every once in a while. And then they come up, but in reality, no one goes to hell because God will find a way to slip you into heaven. Apparently. I don't know. It's the whole concept doesn't work.
The baby should just simply not get cancer in the future. That's true. That is very true.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not a theology person, but this argument just doesn't make like rational sense. So it's boring.
It doesn't.
Very boring.
Yeah, it is.
Yep.
So shall we continue listening to the boring argument?
Yeah.
We have to. It's your fault, Jackson. It's your fault.
We still have an hour left.
It's your fault.
Maybe he'll get to biology eventually.
How far are we into the video? Like, how much?
I was just about to look.
How much?
Let's see.
We're probably
in terms of percentage, like are we halfway or not halfway?
We're on track. So the first time we covered 20 minutes, and we're now about an hour in, and we covered 10.
Nice.
So we're still on track.
Oh no.
We only have.
Right, we should keep going.
Hold on, I need my glasses, which is why I like not being on camera, so you can also not see me with my reading glasses. We only have
it's 2.5 hours left.
Yeah, 2 hours and 40 minutes to be exact.
Oh, Christ. All right, let's keep going.
I blame you, Jackson. You picked this. You made us do this.
I thought it was going to be...
It'll be fun, he said.
I propose that we have now covered the theology, I think, enough. So we can. What about we just move on to stop when he gets to biology?
That's true.
There's just one problem. There's just one problem with that, and that's none of us has listened to the full show, so none of us has a clue where that starts.
Right.
So,
yeah.
Well,
let's just keep going.
In all fairness, would it be? Could you encourage someone to watch it twice in order to figure out where it starts? I mean, I don't know.
But we are only going to watch it once, so let's keep going.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. Yeah, let's keep going.
That freedom for to exploit others and
Yeah,
to harm others.
Sorry, but how do you react to the argument of determinism then, in the face of this argument that God created free will?
Unpack that a little for me.
Determinism.
Yeah.
The concept that like when you see someone who's in jail, say he made a bad decision, he went to jail.
Right.
But if you go back through that person's life, you go through their
right.
Yeah, their life, the childhood, the horrific traumas, all the abuse they've suffered, in and out of the justice system at a very young age, surrounded by crime.
Tragic stuff. Yeah,
right.
exactly.
It's not a free will issue entirely. There's a lot of variables.
Understood.
That's interesting.
The philosophical way of thinking about that is to make a distinction between sort of necessary conditions and sufficient conditions. Many of those
Stephen Meyer
go a different direction. There's two different views of human nature. One is that we are moral agents, free moral agents, and one is that we're completely determined by genes, environment, or evolutionary past.
Or how about neither?
I'm convinced that even in the face of terrible environmental conditions in our background, we are still free to choose. I think there are certain types of backgrounds that incline
He's divorced
people
from
towards,
reality.
A tendency to harm others and to do things that we would regard
this is
as
incredibly
crimes.
divorced from
I think we
reality.
still are free. I think that's a fundamental.
There's some real clear research into trauma and the developmental cycle of children, how it leads to psychopathy and all sorts of other real serious problems.
Sure, no question.
Free will comes into question, and determinism makes a better argument.
I would.
False dichotomy.
There's a
core,
great
right?
philosopher of mine.
How do you respond to that?
I would say that those are predisposing inclinations that are probably necessary to explain the behavior, but not sufficient. That I think even in the face of things
he's literally just saying
incline us towards
he's just
certain
saying
courses of action.
In all fairness, I haven't watched a lot of Joe Rogan stuff, so I do not have a specific opinion about the guy, but he is making it quite difficult for Stephen Meyer at this point because he's firing questions. And
I agree.
Meyer is trying to find a way to reason himself out of this dilemma that he finds himself into now. It's kind of fun to watch, actually. I didn't expect this.
No, actually, yeah. So, like I said in the first video, Rogan, he's not stupid, right? He's not a complete dummy. He doesn't sometimes, but he doesn't always just completely lap up whatever his guest says. Sometimes he kind of does that, but not always. Sometimes he does push back. And I mentioned the Candace Owens interview that he did a few years ago, I think it was, where Candace Owens was like, I don't believe in global warming. And Rogan's like, well, have you read any of the studies? Have you seen that, all of the researchers in this field believe it? And she's like, well, I haven't read the studies. And he's like, well, then how can you possibly say this? You have no way to make this conclusion. And he just kind of pushes against her. And he's done that with other people who are like, he's had far right people on and he'll push against them sometimes. No, I mean, that's totally fair, Dalton, questioning the validity of the studies that Rogan is citing. I don't think I think he's probably on the right track in this case, though, with regard to people who are abused while they're young can end up with developmental problems. I don't see anything wrong with that. But yeah, he's making a fair point here. You're right. He does take Russell Brandon Peterson seriously. Yes, I 100%. He's like, he's also
minus 10 points. Minus 10 points for Joe Rogan.
Yeah. No, you're right. Yeah, absolutely. We should be skeptical of everything he says, as with anyone, and be skeptical of me also. But I do think he's making a fair point here with regard to his question.
But also, I would also point, somebody also said in the chat that it's a false dichotomy.
Yes.
I also I don't subscribe to the so-called libertarian free will that is mutually exclusive with any kind of determinism. So I'm more of a compatibilist with a different kind of free will. But the way Stephen Meyer is using free will, it seems like he's saying like, oh, even if you have you have been dealt a bad deck of cards in life, we can still blame you for what
you can just choose
for where
to
you
be
end
happy.
up in.
But that's that's exactly what the Bible teaches.
Are you poor? Well, too bad. It's on you.
That's Leslie, but that's exactly what the Bible teaches. No matter what God throws at you, look at the book of Job, where Job is tortured.
That's true.
In the most vile ways possible. He gets his entire family taken away, but and I have to puke when Christians say that. But he gets a new wife and new kids, as if that makes up for the loss of your kids. That it doesn't. Don't be stupid, and don't try to romanticize this as if this is a good thing, that he gets everything back in the end. It doesn't. He doesn't get anything back. What he's lost, he's lost.
That's true.
So when Stephen Meyer says, "Oh, they still have free will," he means, "Oh, so they are still responsible for everything they do or end up with." Yeah.
And they have to be.
It's also like a very
They have to be because according to the Bible, you are born a sinner. Everything you think and do is wrong until you find God and until you start reading the Bible, and then for some reason you don't have to do better because all you have to do is believe, and then you're saved. Then you can go back to whatever horrific things you want to do, because it doesn't matter at all what you do in life. You only have to believe.
It's also very politically conservative as well. Like
yes, it is.
Being against being against the social safety net and being against free healthcare and such. So these things like
you just chose to waste your money
yourself.
Yeah,
exactly.
No, 100%. Yeah, this is definitely a conservative line of argumentation.
Yeah.
Like, if you can't be dealt a bad hand, or they'll acknowledge like, okay, maybe you were dealt a bad hand, but it's your fault that you're not a billionaire, or whatever. It's like, no, come on, that's ridiculous.
Just rise and grind.
Jesus said it in the Bible: take from the poor and give it to the rich. Oh wait, no, that was the other way around. Sorry. Yeah, Jesus was a socialist.
You can be a millionaire with the $10 an hour. Yeah.
Yeah. Smitty says, I believe that people have will, but it isn't free. It's contingent. Yeah, exactly. That's what I think Joe is saying here. It's contingent on your life history and stuff. Yeah, definitely. It's definitely contingent. Meyer's trying to do the whole, you could just choose to not be sad about it. Like, that's coming from a place of privilege right there. That's how you know someone has never had to deal with, like, and I'm not saying I have. My life has been someone very, very easy.
Someone who doesn't have a conscience, and someone who doesn't care about other people. I have the free will to be here right now, being on the stream, but also making sure that the stream goes out. I could say, well, I'm not doing it this week. I haven't done that, other than when something happened that I actually couldn't. And I think that happened once. I think that I told you that we were going to have stuff done on the internet, and that it might be a risk that I would lose the show. I mean, I still have free will not to do it, but I actually don't, because I've committed to this, and I think that I feel responsible for just showing up, doing the show, being part of it. Okay, we do have a lot of fun, so that's another thing. And that goes for everything that I do online, for the shows where I'm a part of, and the shows that I'm not a part of, where I'm just a producer. But your free will is contingent, and for a lot of the parts on your own conscience as well, which is why some people might think differently, because they don't have that conscience. They don't feel responsible for doing something for other people just because it's a good thing to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I also think this also harps back on how he views the scientific development. Like, oh, why has science developed immensely in the 1600s in Western Europe and not in Africa? Like, oh, they made the right decisions. Like, it's not like they had any differences in power or wealth or resources. Nothing
they
like
weren't
those
colonialized
things.
or anything.
Yeah.
You know?
And didn't have the white people steal everything from them and then leave them with nothing.
I'm not saying everyone would equally develop science to the same degree, but like, come on, we know a little bit about the history of like indigenous cultures and what Europe did to them. So let's be real.
Someone named Hancock.
Zach Hancock,
in the chat. Yeah, Zach Hancock. Like, he pointed out a while ago that even today, those who do science tend to be from an upper socioeconomic background as well. So yeah.
And that's what we were talking about earlier, like with the rich people funding, like, the Medicis, who funded Michelangelo, and other people. And it took rich families who were able to put their kids, through university, who were able to like hire private tutors and stuff like that, so their kids could get an education, whereas the average kid just couldn't, because there was no public university to go to. They just had to work in, the coal mines or whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Or if you grew up as a pretty boy,
I think we need to move on. So sorry about that.
Yeah, if you grew up as a pretty boy, you could become an assistant of Da Vinci, because he liked pretty boys much. Another thing that they don't want to talk about, because it's kind of controversial. Shouldn't be talking about things like that.
Anyway, let's keep going.
We need to move again. Yeah, otherwise we won't get to the end.
We're not going to get to the end anyway today.
Not today. Yeah, we've been streaming for like 8 hours.
Still have choice. And I think there's a lot of brain physiological research that shows that that supports the idea that the mind is not completely determined by the neurophysiological correlates or the underlying.
Right.
That's not what
chemistry.
he said.
Are we isolating for any reason?
What's that?
Are we isolating these two variables for any reason, whether it's determinism or free will? Like, why does it have? What does one have to win out? Are we not?
I would agree. I think they're. But if you allow any free will at all, then we're not completely determined. In which,
but no one.
That's not what he said, though.
Yeah. Right. Well,
then
there you go.
Determinism proponents are.
Then we're agreeing, Joe. I once heard an excellent lecture.
You're not agreeing.
Berkeley philosopher of mind, John Searle. He was the guy who did that famous Chinese room paradox. And
what is that? It's not that famous.
Well, okay, let's bracket, and I'll get to the main point. Okay. The main thing is, and he showed that with all the research we've had on in brain science, neuroscience, we've shown that there are lots of things that are necessary conditions of certain brain states, and necessary conditions, physiological, necessary physiological. So to have a certain brain state, there must be there are underlying physiological correlates that must be in place. To use that brain state to make a certain course of action, to accomplish a certain course of action. Also, there are necessary necessary conditions, necessary correlates. But he showed that. But we've never in the research showed that have closed the gap between necessary and sufficient. That just because those states are there doesn't mean that someone is forced to make that choice or to
I don't think that's what he's saying at all.
And so I think
I'm pretty sure Joe's saying it's a probabilistic argument.
I'm aware of that as a person all the time. I've I wake up grumpy in the morning because I didn't get enough sleep, it doesn't mean
Right.
I have to slap one of my kids.
Of course, yeah.
So,
but that's why it's kind of a combination of the things.
it is a combination. But in saying it's a combination, you and I are saying the same thing.
Yeah.
There's an element of agency that is retained. I would say for almost all people. I do think there are people who have lost it, if you will, in the sense. I mean, I think there is a legitimate insanity plea.
Sure.
But it's been way overused because we have an underlying commitment to materialism and determinism. Let me tell you a story that.
But let me step in that. We also have psych drugs. There's a real issue with that as well. There's a lot of people that are on medications.
Okay.
And medications have horrible side effects and unintended effects, and there's a lot of that as well.
Yeah, I agree. I'm a big fan of the work of Jeffrey Schwartz, the UCLA psychiatrist, has written the book "You Are Not Your Brain," and he shows that those psychotherapeutic drugs can be helpful in stabilizing people, but that for many anxiety disorders, it's also really important to retrain the thinking patterns that lead to anxiety, that there's a mind over matter aspect well as the material substrate aspect.
That's not contradictory.
And I think you and I are
to
saying
what
the
he's
same
saying,
thing effectively, that if you say there's a combination.
Okay, can we pause for a moment? I just want to briefly say, Meyer started out by saying that mind is completely over matter, that it's complete free will, to which Joe correctly pushed back and said, no, there are lots of things that affect your brain states. And now Meyer is saying, yeah, we agree. It's kind of a combination between total free will and like, your brain states. No, that's the opposite of what he was arguing at first. Like, am I crazy? I feel like he shifted his position.
Yes, you did.
Go ahead.
If we have a plate with a piece of excrement and we present it to everybody on the planet, like most people, like the vast majority, would not eat the piece of excrement, of course.
Yeah.
But if you say like, oh, eat this and I will give you $1 million or something, maybe some will be like push themselves to earn that prize. And I think that is what he is saying. Like, oh, you can still resist your urges, perhaps. I think maybe that's what he is getting at.
Okay, that's fine. Like, because Joe has, from the start of this part of the conversation, been talking about probabilistic arguments, right? He's been saying there are if you have a really bad childhood due to abuse and stuff, you are more probably going to go down certain paths than others. Does that mean 100%? No, of course not.
No.
But what Meyer seemed to indicate at first was you have free will. That's it. And he was kind of pushing back against that. And now he's kind of like, well, I mean, it's kind of both. You have, your things that push you in one direction, but you can also do this. Well, that's what Joe was saying. That's what Joe was saying initially. Meyer has shifted. And he's trying to act like, oh no, we agree. We're saying the same thing here. That's not what he was saying.
What
makes it feels like he's almost like gaslighting.
Yeah. What makes me mad is that he's saying, okay, you have when you have medication for anxiety, you also have to retrain your brain. That is literally what is happening if people prescribe you that medication. It is not just the medication and okay, so here are your pills for the next month and now you're fine and come back when you run out. That's not how that works. And it works the same when it comes to criminal people. Nestle can vouch for this. In the Netherlands, the emphasis
is a criminal.
No, in the Netherlands, the emphasis on when someone commits a crime is not on the punishment, is not on putting them in jail, but is also about the rehabilitation process. And you can in the Netherlands you can get TBS, which is pretty much that you are now a subject of the government. That means that you will get psychological help in order to get you back to where you can rejoin society, and that is unlimited. That is when you go down that particular part of your punishment for your crime, there's no time limit to that.
Mm-hmm.
You get reviews and see how the treatment has worked and whether or not you are capable of going back into society. It's not just here are a bunch of pills and now you're good. No one thinks this way, and Meyer makes it as if this is something that he just came up with see, this is still a part of the free will because you have to do this. Such bullshit.
Was that a Nephilim free reference? Was that a Nephilim free that you see?
Yeah. I mean, it drives me mad because I see Christians doing this all the time. You need Jesus and then you're going to be cured of all your mental illnesses. They will go away. They don't. Stop telling people that.
Yeah, it's true.
But
okay,
I'm on a rant again. Not good.
Well, he is infuriating, so it's fair.
Yes. Continue.
Yes.
Okay.
Involved, and one of them is our own human agency. Then we're saying that we retain free will even in the face of predisposing materialistic factors. If I could, a story, because we're getting pretty heady and philosophical.
Yeah, it's all good.
So
it's good stuff.
No, they're really not.
1925 is the famous Scopes trial with Clarence Darrow.
The
year or two before that, I can't remember the exact year, there's a famous Leopold and Loeb case in Chicago. Two young college students commit a horrific murder. They're taking philosophy courses from a professor who is an advocate or a proponent of Nietzschean, the Nietzschean Übermensch, the idea of the overman. And
is he really saying because they were thought Nietzsche,
the really enlightened person extricates themselves from bourgeois morality and chooses their own morality. And so these two young college students end up killing a 12-year-old boy for the thrill of it, was the justification. They're convicted.
I feel like Nietzsche would be opposed to that, but
they're tried, they're convicted, they're awaiting sentencing, and the ACLU sends out Clarence Darrow to argue for leniency, for clemency, or for leniency in the case, and he makes the first diminished responsibility plea in American jurisprudence history. He says, was Dickie Loeb to blame because of the infinite forces that were at work in him through the evolutionary millions of years before? And so he appeals to evolutionary determinism to say that these two young guys were not responsible for what they had done. And basically our genes, our environment, and the evolutionary process.
Okay,
let's pause.
How the fuck did he get to evolution?
I'm saying,
how did he make that leap?
It's okay. So, right, yeah. Let's take a look. Let's read about something a little bit. Here, you can pull it over.
Leopold and Loeb.
Okay, so Nathan Freudenthal, Leopold Jr., and Richard Albert Loeb. Peter, you can change the screen. Usually referred to collectively as Leopold and Loeb, were two wealthy students at the University of Chicago who kidnapped and murdered 14-year-old Bobby Franks in Chicago, Illinois, United States in May 1924. They committed the murder, characterized at the time as the crime of the century, hoping to demonstrate superior intellect, which they believe enabled and entitled them to carry out a perfect crime without consequence. After the two men were arrested, Loeb's family retained Clarence Darrow as lead counsel for their defense. Darrow's 12-hour summation at their sentencing hearing is noted for its influential criticism of capital punishment as retributive rather than transformative justice. Both young men were sentenced to life imprisonment plus 99 years. Loeb was murdered. Leopold was released on parole. The case has served as an inspiration for several dramatic works. Trial? ? Let's see. Clarence Darrow, he was a staunch opponent of capital punishment. So I guess they were going to get capital punishment, but he argued against it. So while it was generally assumed that the men's defense would be based on a plea of not guilty by reason of insanity, Darrow concluded that a jury trial would almost certainly end in conviction and the death penalty. Thus, he elected to enter a plea of guilty, hoping to convince Cook County Circuit Court Judge John R. Caverly to impose sentences of life imprisonment. The trial, technically an extended sentencing, as their guilty pleas had already been accepted, ran for 32 days. The state's attorney, Robert Crow, presented over 100 witnesses documenting details of the crime. The defense presented extensive psychiatric testimony in an effort to establish mitigating circumstances, including childhood neglect in the form of absent parenting, and in Leopold's case, sexual abuse by a governess. One piece of evidence was a letter written by Leopold claiming that he and Loeb were having a homosexual affair. Both the prosecution and the defense interpreted this information as supportive of their own position. Darrow called a series of expert witnesses who offered a catalog of Leopold and Loeb's abnormalities. One witness testified to their dysfunctional endocrine glands, and another to the delusions that had led to their crime. Darrow's impassioned 12-hour-long masterful plea at the conclusion of the hearing has been called the finest speech of his career. Its principal arguments were that the methods and punishment of the American justice system are inhumane, and the youth and immaturity of the accused. I'm not seeing anything about evolution in here. I see.
Well, I have found a Smithsonian article that does mention a quote. Like it says, I quote: "Darrow's opposition to capital punishment found its greatest source of inspiration in the new scientific disciplines of the early 20th century," and it gives a quote, and it quotes Darrow saying, "Science and evolution teach us that man is an animal, a little higher than the others, than the other orders of animals, that he is governed by the same natural laws that governs the rest of the universe." Like I think he was basically making any argument he could make about the determinism, including the endocrine gland system. Yeah, and such.
Yeah, no, I don't see. Yeah, and that's fair, but it was obviously not that he was using evolution to excuse their actions. Obviously, he is not using evolution to excuse their actions, and so Meyer is therefore lying when he is trying to pretend that that's what happened. Well, I mean, surprise, Meyer lied.
At best, he was trying to explain the actions and explain why capital punishment was not appropriate. But of course, even then, I wouldn't agree with his arguments as well. Although I am still against capital punishment, but not for the reasons
absolutely.
It's a good sign that you had to look
Meyer was
further.
Shock.
It's a good sign that you had to look further, Nestle, to even find a mention of evolution. When Jackson listed a lot of things that led up to this.
It's a very short quote. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and it's used in the defense. It's not used in describing how it led to the crime.
Mm-hmm.
At least that's not what I got from it.
Meyer,
so,
Meyer's lying. What a surprise.
Yeah. You have to find something to blame evolution, right? I mean,
that's true. It's all those evil materialists.
He's talked for about 40 minutes thereabouts. We're closing in, I guess, on 40 minutes, and he hasn't found anything negative to say about evolution. So he had to dig real deep and find something.
He had to find something really far down.
Yeah. Okay. Let's continue.
That programmed these inclinations into these young men is the real culprit, is what was responsible.
Yeah.
And so this is the first time we get the diminished responsibility plea in our legal system. There was a little cartoon in the Wall Street Journal
an insanity plea.
With this hapless guy standing before
and evolution didn't program it into the
not
boys.
Guilty by reason of millions of years of evolutionary selection for aggressive behavior, Your Honor.
This is literally
that's
just
what I reject.
Ken Hammer.
I'm a critic of that form of.
If that were the case, then why aren't we all killing people Why is it just a minority of people who murder? If it's bred into us over millions of years, as you say, then where did the rest of us come from? Don't get it. Only a few people evolved? Are we behind or are we ahead, Jackson? I'm confused.
I'm just on the side. I have no idea.
Okay.
Determinism. I don't deny that there are factors that influence behavior or
except you kind of did earlier,
thoughts or influences. But ultimately, I want the mind over matter approach. I want to say let's.
Oh, you want?
We are responsible ultimately for what we think and what we do with those thoughts.
You'd like to believe it.
I mean, if I'm paraphrasing, but the thought process at our best is what the creator's looking for.
Right.
This is the idea that what we all gravitate towards, what we all inherently recognize as being good, regardless of culture, regardless of geopolitical boundaries and all the various different things that make us unique all across the globe. We all know what's good. Family, love, community, that all these things are somehow or another in us.
Exactly. The great Christian apologist C.S. Lewis argued that there was a universally understood morality that he called.
I'm going to highlight it. Jake Nelson said, "If you can't blind them with brilliance, baffle them with bullshit." Exactly.
That is true. That is very true.
It is.
Also, C.S. Lewis was not a great Christian apologist. He was a crap Christian apologist.
The Tao.
He was
the Tao.
Oh, what was his name? The dude who was who's the guy who went up against Sam Harris, who does the like woo woo karma and all that crap, like the energies of
Deepak Chopra.
Yeah, he's like Deepak Chopra for Christians. That's what C.S. Lewis was. That was my whole thing. Okay. Anyway, we can keep going.
We all know it's wrong to kick old ladies in the shins for pleasure.
Do we?
You do these.
Do we know that?
Kind of case studies in ethical philosophy, but there might be a case where you need to kill someone.
He was a decent Christian fiction author.
But you can easily construct things that reveal these deep moral intuitions we have. It's not okay to kick old ladies in the shins for pleasure. That's wrong, and that's wrong in a Christian culture. It's wrong in an Asian culture. That in a pre-Christian Asian culture, it's wrong in a.
It's almost like.
Except if
it's almost like it's not a religion thing.
Except if the old lady is a witch. Then it's fine. I've heard people say. Mostly Christians.
It doesn't matter.
Dalton, we all had Turkish
those.
Delight one time, I'm pretty sure, and it was not bad. I thought it was okay. I don't think it was good enough to like sell Aslan for 30 pieces of silver, but I thought Turkish Delight was okay. It was fine. Isn't Jordan Peterson Chopra for Christians? Yeah, I would agree with. I would say with like conservatives in general, not necessarily just Christians. But yes, you're right. Okay, C.S. Lewis is a decent.
No, Peterson is a Chopra for edgy YouTubers.
That's also fair. I did actually I enjoy it's been a long time since I read them, but I actually like the Chronicles of Narnia. I thought they were good. I'm referring more to like Mere Christianity is more what I'm referring to. But the Chronicles of Narnia are fun. They're fun. They're kind of trippy, especially like the last two books where it's the creation narrative and the like Revelation. They're just bonkers. It's like an acid trip, which just like Revelation in the Bible. But whatever. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. I'm not mad. That's fine. All right, we can keep it. He's Chopra for incels. Also true.
So isn't that Trump also? The Deepak Chopra for incels? Incels and Proud Boys.
Trump and Peterson have a lot in common in that neither of them can find the end of the sentence. They both just kind of like they start a sentence and they just are like they're on a trip. They don't know where they're going, but they're on a trip. Darn it, and they're gonna go somewhere. C.S. Lewis wrote an old immortal woman as a Satan analog, and Meyer is saying it's not okay to kick old ladies. Very true, Dalton. Very true. I don't even remember what happened in the silver chair. I remember like the first three. I remember like, really all the ones that they made the like big movies for. I remember what happened in those books. I don't remember The Horse and His Boy or The Silver Chair. Or well, other than like the end of the world and creational world. I don't remember much else. Yeah. I like The Lion, Witch, and Wardrobe and Prince Caspian and Voyage of the Dawn Treader. Those were good. I liked them. They're fine. Yeah. Anyway. All right, we can keep going. Sorry. Off track.
That awareness of sort of objective moral principles. And I think the way you put it was beautiful. I think that the Creator wants us to live in accord with those things we know to be.
That's what you
but
believe.
These objective moral principles, they do vary with the environment and the amount of resources and stress and the dangers. Like for instance, I think it's Pinker's work where he talks about hunter-gatherer tribes that relatively frequently kill the older women because they just can't keep up anymore, and they're nomadic and they get in the way, and so they try to catch them when they're not looking.
It's a great example because it actually illustrates the deeper universality of the moral, the deeper moral principles.
Right.
Even cultures that were involved in child sacrifice, they had belief systems that suggested that if they sacrificed the children, then the crops would come in and it would benefit the tribe as a whole.
Right.
So the underlying value was the preservation of life, even though they had a moral.
That is
there's a difference between a moral
argument.
Judgment and a moral principle.
Jackson, that's in the Bible. That's in the Bible. Give me your firstborn. That's literally from the Bible. So it's.
Oh, there it went. Okay, my bad. Sorry, it's my internet. Okay. This is a nonsense argument.
Yeah.
This is a nonsense argument.
Yeah. According to that argument, you could say like, oh, kicking people's shins for fun is actually good because you're having fun and you're promoting your own well-being.
And God wants you to have fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is good.
This is nonsense.
It's a good point. It is good for your well-being because if you're happy, you're more productive. So you would work harder. You would pay better attention. You would show more interest in maybe doing other good things in different fields, and then go back and kick the old woman a couple of times to get that great feeling again, so you can be productive again. And
so Smitty is outlining this very well. He says the universality of the deeper moral principles of spilling blood to survive. Nothing is more moral than a male lion eating the cubs of a rival because he's valuing the survival of his own. He treasures life. Yeah, no, that's a fantastic way to put that. We have to murder somebody else to preserve our own lives. And he's saying, yeah, well, because you're preserving life, that's fine. That's great. That's the Christian. No, this is some like Orwellian doublespeak going on right here. This actually killing people is good. Maybe that actually, well, okay, that,
he doesn't believe that. Yeah, he doesn't believe that it would be moral to do so, but he's just saying like, oh, they still have an underlying principle, like it's still.
Yeah, I mean, okay, like if you, I mean, couldn't you make the same thing about like, oh, the Nazis believe that they had to destroy the Jews in order to survive because the Jews were bringing down their culture? Like, no, that's a really bad argument.
Didn't Peterson make that kind of argument?
I wouldn't be surprised, honestly. Basically, he's just saying like self-preservation underlies human our moral principles, which we like to exist, we like to continue existing. So of course self-preservation's going to exist. Like what? This is such a bonkers argument.
But then again, according to that argument, and anything can be moral principle, like literally anything. Like if I can say like, oh, I want to kick old people's shins for fun because that makes me happy. So I'm preserving my own
the pursuit of happiness.
Yeah.
The pursuit of happiness is a universal principle. We all share in common the pursuit of happiness. Yeah, well, obviously. Sounds more like a Kanye thing, to be honest. That's terrible, but maybe true. I don't know. Didn't he say he likes Jews again because he watched like a Jonah Hill movie or something? I don't know. We're definitely gonna get demonetized now. We're definitely gonna get demonetized now. Anyway, okay, we can keep going.
They made a moral judgment that this is what was necessary to affirm the underlying moral principle. Now, I would argue they had a false worldview that suggested that this was necessary. But because they believed that idea about the need to sacrifice children to the gods, they made a moral judgment that differed from one that I would make or you would make, but they did in the process actually affirm a deeper moral principle that is the value of human life.
Right, but the question is, where did that idea even come from to sacrifice a child?
Well, that came from their mythological religious belief.
Where did that come from?
The more important question is, where did the underlying moral principle come from, and why is that?
Actually, that is the more interesting
question. On what basis
question.
can we justify it as a universal ought rather than just a statement of fact?
But does it exist in a person who's sacrificing a child?
Is it?
The universal moral principle seems to have been completely abandoned. If you're sacrificing a child for some reason that you cannot prove, that it's somehow or another going to influence something according to whatever your beliefs are, that's going to make the crops come back.
Oh, I agree with you. I think something very deep and profound has to be overwritten, but I think that is the role that
this kind of sounds like he's excusing their behavior.
Not in that situation. Their religious belief system allowed them to do it, and in fact, probably encouraged them.
That's exactly what I'm saying. That religious belief system overrode the intuition that they would normally have based on the underlying moral principle.
Well, why do they have that religious belief system? If God is going to present religious beliefs, if God is going to somehow or another come down and give wisdom to men, why do some have this very fucked up version of it?
I can't answer that. I mean, there's a multiplicity of systems of belief.
Cool.
What I have tried to do is argue for a theistic belief system that I think makes sense. I think it gives a good account of this objective morality, but also I think there's scientific evidence for it, and that's what my work has been about. I'm not a sociologist of religion, so I don't know exactly how all these different variants arose, but some of them have.
I was about to say I'm pretty bored right now.
I'm so happy that he apparently doesn't know that there are two instances in the Bible where God commands eating their young, and we're talking about humans here.
Yeah.
So and he doesn't know where it comes from, when it's in his own holy book saying that it comes from his God. But apparently those are the parts.
Is somebody in your life chat, Satan, Meyer? The answer is Satan.
Yeah, in this case it wasn't Satan. It was literally God himself who commanded it.
You can see he wants to say it. Yeah. I guarantee, if he were
of course,
if Joe were like an apologist or something, or interviewing him for a Christian show, like 100%, Meyer would just say it was Satan.
He would have.
Like no doubt in my mind, he would just say that, like just mask off.
Which is why I like the questioning. By the way, you can see him struggle with finding answers, which otherwise would have been so easy had the interviewer been a Christian and had it been on a Christian channel, because that would have made things so much easier for him. Now he has to try and instead he's just kind of like himself out of his own beliefs.
Yeah, and it really did sound like he was kind of apologizing for the like child sacrifice, because he said you have the underlying moral principle, which is correct. The moral principle is correct, but they just executed it incorrectly, which, like,
They had the wrong religion, Jackson. They had the wrong religion.
That's literally just what it sounds like. He's just saying they had the wrong religion, and it's like, okay, but like, we could say that about yours, right? They could just look at Meyer and say the same thing, like, oh, well, you just have the wrong interpretation of why this moral principle exists. Like, there's no there. He's just literally just saying, well, they believe something. They believe in a different God than I do. So yeah. It's like, well, who cares? Literally, who cares? My goodness. No arguments here. Okay.
Yeah.
Nope.
Like it's strange because I want him to move on to biology, even though I know he knows nothing about biology.
Well, yeah, he want. It's like he is philosophy by trade. Like trade, he's philosophy, and but he writes about biology.
Boring. How can you be boring at your own field?
You know what? Joe just hasn't gotten him to do DMT yet. Once he does DMT, then it'll be fun. Then we'll really get the show going. I guess we're gonna watch like one more clip, and then we'll probably call it.
Okay.
Sort of consequences where people have, against their deeper intuitions, overridden them because they have this belief that they got to do this to make the crops come in, or to
right.
You know.
I know that's not necessarily your field of study, but it's still somehow or another these things are all intertwined in this idea.
Sure.
Yeah. So
hold on for a moment.
Yeah.
Like it's also like a moment before, Joe was arguing against Meyer about determinism. Like, oh, you have this cultural background that determines where you end up. But now Meyer is saying like, oh, these people have a certain culture that makes them do what they do. It's really ironic. Yeah.
No, you're 100% correct. Yeah, I didn't even think about that. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, earlier it was all free will, and now he's like, oh man, they were just completely overridden by their cultural milieu, and that's why they did this. Like, what? What do you mean? Anyway, okay, that's a really good point, Nestle. That's a good point.
In making the argument that I'm making, I'm not claiming to have answered all the other imponderables of
course,
you know,
of course. Yeah. No, look, it's a fascinating conversation. It's a fascinating thought.
Already it is. Yeah.
But I mean, even there's just the thought of something that is either intelligent or is code that is interwoven into the entire universe itself. Okay. I have a question.
Sure,
when
why not?
We think of human beings.
Aliens,
we always think of human beings.
I mean, that's an awesome thing you just said, actually. I mean, I was talking to my colleague David Berlinski about that very issue this morning. You know, how it's not just the biologists, but the physicists are now thinking of
there are literally no biologists who believe that
as being informational. You know, and I mean, we've located. We know the locus. Or the place where the code is stored in a living organism. That's an unbelievable discovery.
Right.
For 2,000, 4,000 years, however long humans have thought about these things, at least back to the time of Aristotle, we've had this mystery. Why does like beget like?
I was
Why
expecting a Freudian slip like humans have been around.
Why? And in 1953 through 65, we have this amazing flurry of scientific activity that elucidates the source of the signal that ensures that transmission of hereditary information. And we discovered there actually is a code.
All of which inspired by this guy from the UK. What was it? Charles.
Who was an atheist, mind you.
Something. I forgot his name.
Well, he's talking about...
something
he's talking about like Watson and Crick in the 50s.
Yeah, but I said it's inspired by this guy from the UK who sailed on the dog boat. Or was it Beagle, I think?
On the dog boat.
Yeah. I mean...
But Watson and Crick were atheists. So is he going to be like, but actually they were doing God's work or something?
Yeah. God uses a lot of atheists these days. He has to go with the times. He goes with the times and tries to be hip and modern. So, yeah. He blesses a lot of atheists.
Hey, even God can't fight the zeitgeist. He is subject to it also. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very true.
Okay.
Okay, you know what? We're close enough to the time. We're just going to call it.
Okay.
All right. So if you want to switch screens again. All right, so
I think he was about to go into the biology stuff. So
well, maybe next time we'll
next time, yeah.
Yeah,
that would be fun for next time, yeah.
I'll rewind it just a little bit for next time so we can have the decent introduction to hopefully some science. We'll see.
Yeah, here's hoping because that this whole thing was like philosophy theology, which sorry everybody, like we said in the last episode, none of us here on the panel have watched this in advance. The whole point of these shows is to just do this off the cuff, right? Because if we put effort and whatnot into it, then it just ends up being like the other videos we do on this channel. So this is supposed to be very easy content. So anyways, all right. So what do you guys have coming up in the near future?
Well,
or distant future.
I was thinking, as I mentioned before in the stream, I've done some I'm doing some research about gene regulation and the and how it affects body plans, and perhaps you can do like a Phylomaniacs episode of that if you want, at least.
Okay, yeah, sure.
Yeah,
that could be a future thing.
But it does have to be next week, or it can be anytime. Like I think next week will be Myers again. I think, yeah.
Yeah, I think we're gonna. I'd like to finish.
And the week after that,
yeah.
And the week after that, and the week after that.
Listen, Peter, we get it. We get it.
I'm not complaining. I'm not complaining at all. So I'm as I said, I'm kind of surprised that the line of questioning sometimes is actually pretty good and is driving him into defense mode, and you can see that's where he starts struggling. So I can't help but like it a little. As for me, I think within about 10 minutes I'll be live again in Australia this time. An Australian friend of mine is trying to get some content creators together because there's this woman that I think you have encountered as well. Her name is Bread of Life, aka Rebecca.
Rebecca. Yeah.
Yes. So she had two channels, one of which was obviously an anti-evolutionist channel where all the mistakes of evolution were exposed by the likes of a guy named Sal. I forgot who it. He's famous for chasing a mouse during a live show, which was hilarious. He climbed into he climbed into his own ceiling. He had a ladder and everything. It was pretty good content, actually. But so she decided to make her main channel atheist free. So that's becoming an echo chamber now, where she used to give away $50 gift certificates for atheists to turn up in the chat, and so they got an atheist of the month thing, I guess. I don't know. So we're gonna have a chat about that.
I have zero desire to interact with her ever again. That was one of the most annoying conversations I'd ever had.
It was really
and I've
frustrating.
had a lot of conversations with creationists.
The one thing that stood out for me...
Not that she had any actual good arguments, because she didn't, and by the end of it, she accepted everything that... she accepted the paper that we had presented, that I had...
Oh, what paper was it?
I had to read... well, by accident, I was supposed to send her a different paper, but by accident, I had to read the paper by William Ratcliffe et al., where they evolved these unicellular yeast to be multicellular, and then they evolved macroscopic multicellularity. And by the end of the article, she was like, we go all the way through it with Dapper and everything, and then she was like, okay, I get it. And we were like, well, all right then. And she goes, but do you think this happens more often? It's like, yes, this happens all the time.
Yeah. What frustrated me most is
was it on her channel?
No, that was on Jackson's channel.
No, it was here.
And So she had agreed to come
I
on.
missed it too.
She had agreed to come on, and by accident you sent her the wrong paper, and then she didn't want to do it about the paper that you initially wanted to do. And she, before we went live, she said,
"Well, that's okay.
We're not going to talk about any other topic than this paper." And a little over halfway into the show, she brought up tons of different topics where you and Dapper weren't allowed to do that. And that was something that really frustrated me, where I thought you were an honest person, and now you confine people to just doing this particular paper and then bringing in tons of new topics yourself. That, to me, that's a level of dishonesty that I don't get.
And that's true. I made a mistake in that. It was my fault. That was my bad as a whatever host or whatever. And that was my fault. But yeah, you're right. It was ridiculous. It was also like she just spent the first 10 minutes or so just being like, "We're not going to talk about anything else. You said we talk about only this paper." And I was like, "Okay, that's fine. We're just going to talk about this one paper." "Well, you said we're just going to talk about this." "Yes, that's fine."
Yeah.
I'm like, God, it was so annoying. Anyway.
She was so adamant about that. Oh, and speaking.
No.
I wasn't speaking. I wasn't speaking about he who shall not be named. So no, we're not going to talk about that person. Tomorrow, if all goes well, then I'm going to have a really fun conversation with a guy I actually like. He's a Christian from South Africa, and I really like the guy. He's a very likable guy. He has a good sense of humor, and so that's probably why we get along so well. We're going to have a conversation about the evidence for demons. And I kid you not, he made a video for me with evidence for demons. And about half of that video is, which was his main evidence, was a guy, an obscure YouTuber. I forgot, Aaron Ra or something, arguing for demons. I kid you not. So that's going to be a fun conversation. I'm really looking forward to that. And so Saturday, I'm going to have another Christian on my channel, a guy who goes on Twitter by the name of Orna Verum, or aka Timothy. And I'm hoping that I'm going to have Cypher, who's been on your channel a few times on this show, actually, that he's going to be my co-host again. So this guy read a book, and when he said, when I've read the book, I'm going to come back, because then I have something that I can smash you in the face with. Well, we'll see. And so, so Saturday is still my day off from Orange Channel. Sunday we'll be back with the Book of Mormon, which last time was pretty hilarious because we had Jimmy Snow on, and people were talking about the weather, and one of the panelists was complaining about that we didn't read enough of the Book of Mormon. And then Jimmy said, "Okay, I want everyone to super chat the weather where they're at." We never had so many super chats. So we need to start doing this here. When we have conversations like this, where it's not entirely entertaining, but yet fun to go over, people in the chat, keep in mind, you can super chat, and then we will read it out, except one person in chat at the moment. He can super chat all he wants, and we will go get ice cream and say nothing. But no, you can super chat. Jackson is monetized, so feel free to super chat. Give the guy some love. Monetized. I mean, he does a lot of work, not only on this channel, but also for other channels. So, super chats. I should have done this at the start, shouldn't I?
It's true. It's okay. We can always do it next time.
Anyway.
Alrighty. Well, on that note, I think we're going to sign off. Thank you, Neslig, and thank you, Peter, both for being here, and thank you, Peter, for hosting as always.
Anytime.
And thank you, everybody in the side chat who is here. I appreciate all of you, and I hope all of you have a wonderful week, and we will see everybody next Thursday. So bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.